Hello then, good afternoon ladies and gentlemen, this is L24 News, streaming live from the capital Algiers, and coming up next in our news program. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. With these words, President Joe Biden declared forcefully that Russian President Vladimir Putin should no longer remain in power. Four Russian rockets have struck Ukraine's Lviv in one of the fiercest attacks on the western city, providing safe haven for hundreds of thousands of people fleeing confrontation in the east of the country. Yemen's Houthis announced three-day ceasefire after Saudi attack. Statement comes a day after a wave of drone and missile attacks hit targets across Saudi Arabia. Oscars producers plan thoughtful Ukraine tribute and don't rule out Zelensky appearance, but the actor Simpian calls for Oscars boycott if Ukraine's president isn't featured. Starting our news with the latest update over Russia-Ukraine conflict. U.S. President Joe Biden says that Russia's war in Ukraine has been a strategic failure for Moscow and that Vladimir Putin cannot remain in power. The Kremlin slams commands and says it is up to Russians to choose their president. Russian forces captured Ukraine's Slovakia, where workers from the Chernobyl nuclear plant live, and 3 people have been killed. The mayor said Russian forces have fired at nuclear research reactor in eastern city of Kharkiv. The Ukrainian parliament claims 5 people have been wounded in missile attacks on Lviv in western Ukraine, says region's governor. Joe Biden's visit to Poland ended up with a speech that alleged President Vladimir Putin, in which Biden said Russia's President Vladimir Putin cannot remain in power and called him a butcher. On the other hand, the Kremlin dismissed a remark by U.S. President Joe Biden on Saturday that Vladimir Putin cannot remain in power, saying it was up to Russians to choose their own president.
We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principles, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. Don't even think about moving on 1 single inch of NATO territory. We have sacred obligation.
You know, you're dealing every day with Vladimir Putin. I mean, look at what he's done to these people. What does it make you think?
He's a butcher.
According to Ukrainian authorities, 2 strategic infrastructures were hit and 5 people injured in a series of strikes on the city of Lviv, a large city in western Ukraine, relatively safe from the military operation so far. Zarfarjani has more to tell.
At least 5 people were reportedly injured Saturday after at least 3 missiles struck Lviv, a city in western Ukraine that had been previously spared from Russian attacks, according to local officials. Maxim Kozatsky, the head of the Lviv Regional Military Administration, confirmed this Saturday attacks.
2 strategic infrastructures were affected. One of them is a fuel depot in the city of Lviv, in a residential area. The second is a military site, a factory also located in a residential area. 2 strikes were made on each of them.
There was no immediate comment on the Lviv attacks from the Russian authorities, who refer to the situation in Ukraine as special military operation aimed at demilitarizing the country. Mayor of Lviv, Andriy Sadovy, said the attacks had caused significant damage to infrastructure facilities.
With today's strikes, the attackers want to say hello to President Biden, who is currently in Poland. Lviv is only 70 kilometers from the Polish border. I think the world needs to understand that the threat is very, very serious.
Lviv is a strategic Ukrainian city close to the Polish border that hasn't been bombarded, unlike much of the cities across the country during the Russian military operation. The series of strikes came just a day after the Russian military said that the first phase of the conflict had ended and that it was shifting its attention to the disputed eastern parts of Ukraine.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky pledged Western countries to receive more weapons to defend his country and his freedom, as well as that of Europe. He also accuses Russia of wanting to destroy everything that makes Ukrainian people an independent population.
What is the price of the security? It is very precise. These are planes for Ukraine. These are tanks for our state. This is missile defense. It is a weapon against ships. That's what our partners have, which have only dust. After all, this is all for the freedom, not just of Ukraine, but the freedom of Europe.
United Nations Development Programme says that the economic impact of the war will take a toll of many generations to come. 18 years socioeconomic achievement lost in Ukraine. 90% population could face poverty. 50% businesses shut down. According to Ukrainian officials, Russian soldiers took control of a village where the defunct Chernobyl nuclear plant worker reside and temporarily, and 3 people have been killed, which provoked demonstrations. Russian forces have fired up another Ukrainian nuclear facility, according to officials. Government-affiliated news outlet Ukraine Now reported via Telegram on Sunday that the Russian army attacked the Kharkiv Institute of Physics and Technology, which is said to house nuclear material and an experimental reactor. Emin Japaruva, Ukraine's first deputy minister of foreign affairs, criticized Russian forces on Twitter and said that Russia had used multiple rocket launchers. Ukraine has asked the International Committee of the Red Cross not to open a proposed office in Rostov-on-Don, Russia, claiming that doing so would legitimize Moscow's humanitarian corridors and the kidnapping and the forced repatriation of Ukrainians. Following talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Thursday, the head of the International Committee of the Red Cross warned that an agreement between the Russian and Ukrainian militaries were required before civilians could be adequately evacuated from war-torn Ukraine. According to Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk, Ukraine and Russia have come to an agreement for 2 humanitarian corridors to evacuate civilians from battle zones on Sunday and letting people leave using the vehicles from the southern city of Mariupol. After the month since the start of this conflict, besieged cities in Ukraine, including Mariupol, have witnessed evacuation campaigns as an attempt to drive people safe out from this conflict zone. Islam Sidon Watfolo.
Despite shelling in many Ukrainian cities, Kharkiv is believed to be the second Ukrainian city to be uncovered to the conflict after Mariupol. But Kharkiv people are determined to stay in their city and keep it clean. On the other hand, Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister said 7,333 people in Mariupol have been evacuated via humanitarian corridors. However, Kyiv has called for International Red Cross to help the Ukrainians who were expelled from Mariupol to Russia, with an estimated number of 30,000 have been evacuated from the besieged city via Russia. Meanwhile, Mayor Vadim Boychenko confirmed that 50% of the city's total 540,000 population has successfully left Mariupol. The city of Odessa has been relatively untouched by the conflict and was first exposed to it 4 days ago. The mayor of Ukraine's largest port city describes the situation as tense.
Right now, the situation in Odessa is tense. People are living in fear. Children are living in fear. The last shelling 2 days ago of the civilian population, this time of the civilian dwellings, is still living more fear and fear in the civilian population. Of course, we do everything we can to make it safe to stay in the city, but no one can give any guarantees that tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, or even in the future.
Ukrainian officials accuse Russia of abducting people by forcibly removing them in unknown directions through virtual humanitarian corridors, where Moscow hasn't responded to the allegations.
In the same line of thought, and since Russia started this military operation in Ukraine, Russian missiles have fallen on Kharkiv on a regular basis, but time stood still for a new moment on Saturday when a group of Ukrainian musicians move listeners with a classical symphony. More in this report.
For half an hour, 3 violinists, a cellist, and a bass player charmed a crowd of few dozen people in one of Ukraine's major subway stations close to the Russian border. The musicians, aged 20 to 35, sang the national anthem and many pieces from popular Ukrainian folklore, underground safe from rockets and missiles.
Events like these provide a ray of hope, allowing us to remain optimistic and believe that everything will turn out well in the end.
The enthralled audience was made up of displaced persons who were enjoying the music on a marble staircase. Since the military operation began on February 24, they have been living in the station, fleeing the war above and sleeping in derelict wagons.
It was just an idea to be useful to my people, my country and my hometown. I love this city. It belongs to us.
Sergei Politucci, director of Kharkiv Music Fest, one of the most prestigious music festivals in Ukraine, said, "When our heart is full, it helps us overcome difficult times." The concert was his idea, organized on the same day that the annual event would have begun. He also said, despite the sound of war, music doesn't stop.
Thousands of Russian demonstrators gathered in central Prague on Saturday to protest against President Vladimir Putin and demand that he stops the war in Ukraine. Around 5,000 people, according to organizers, chanted "Freedom for Russia, peace for Ukraine" as they marched through the historic center of Prague.
40,000 Russians live in the Czech Republic, and so far these Russians have been a mystery for the Czechs. Who are these people? How much money do they have? What do they do? What do they have in this action? First of all, it is not paradoxical for the Czechs, for Czech society, to show what kind of Russians live here, to show that they are against Putin, against the war, that they support Czech laws and government and support Ukraine.
I want peace everywhere. I know that there are many people in Russia who do not agree with what is happening. And I want to state my position. I'm not against Russians, I'm against injustice, against war, against cruelty.
According to British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, sanctions targeting Russia's elites and corporations may be withdrawn if Russia President Vladimir Putin ends the attack, and he promised no more actions. In an interview published today, Truss said that the Foreign Office has developed a negotiation section to help with prospective peace talks. Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, has warned that the United Kingdom and its partners will still ratchet up sanctions against Russia President Vladimir Putin and his supporters. Yemen's Houthis rebel announced a 3-day truce with the Saudi-led coalition and suspended the prospect of permanent ceasefire on Saturday, the 7th anniversary of the brutal conflict that has left millions on the brink of famine. Osama Yadi.
Yemen's Houthi rebel leader on Saturday announced a 3-day halt to hostilities after an escalation of missile, drone and ground attacks on Saudi Arabia over the past week on a TV report of the rebel-run Al Masirah TV.
We unilaterally announced the suspension of missile and drone strikes and all military actions towards the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia by land, sea and air for a period of 3 days. We affirm that we are ready to transform this declaration into a final, firm and permanent commitment if the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia announces and undertakes to end the siege and cease its air raids on the territory of the Republic of Yemen on a permanent basis.
The unilateral truce was announced by Mahdi al-Mashhad, president of the Houthi ruling political council, in a speech marking the 7th anniversary of the war. Al-Mashhad stated that the rebels are ready to turn the halt of the confrontations into a final commitment if Saudi Arabia announces the withdrawal of all foreign troops from their land and water territories.
We confirm that the suspension of offensive operations includes the Marib front. Regarding this front, we put back on the agenda what was included and we expect a positive response.
Rebel forces have targeted key infrastructure in Saudi Arabia, including Aramco facilities in Jeddah, where a Formula One race took place over the weekend. Coalition forces have responded by launching airstrikes against sites in Yemen, renewing concern of the escalation in regional violence. Just 2 hours after the suspension was announced, rebels accused Saudi-led coalition fighter jets of launching strikes on Houthi targets in the Yemeni capital Sana'a. The strikes hit a Nahdin military compound south of the capital and also targeted Houthi sites in Hajjah province, which borders Saudi Arabia.
Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu told the forum in the Doha, Qatar, that the activities of Russian oligarchs and all Russian citizens are welcome in Turkey if they respect international laws. He added that Turkey will not transfer Russian-made S-400 missiles to Ukraine and that Turkey would consider buying more weapons systems from Russia.
This S-400 is a done deal. And recently we have seen these very interesting rumors that Turkey is asked to give this S-400 to Ukraine. It's out of question. So it's really funny to raise this, and it was leaked by Americans, I think. So we never considered this. So if you mean that whether these oligarchs can do any business in Turkey, then of course, if it is legal, and if it is not against international law, I will consider. If it is against international law, then that's another story.
After 11 months of frozen talks in Vienna, U.S. Special Envoy for Iran, Robert Malley, stated on Sunday that he was not optimistic about a nuclear deal between global powers and Iran. On the other hand, the head of European diplomacy, Josep Borrell, said Saturday that the conclusion of an Iranian nuclear agreement is a matter of days during the Doha Forum, despite some issues and obstacles in Qatar.
And every day the deal is more difficult because the public opinion are mobilizing everywhere, and I cannot tell you when and how, but it's a matter of days. It's a matter of days.
Palestinians cast their votes in local elections in the West Bank on Saturday, less than a year after Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas cancelled parliamentary elections. Most of the candidates compete as an independents, although many of them have linked to the Fatah movement, and the result depends on a large extent on local dynamics, while the Hamas movement boycotts and refuses to hold the election. The Fatah movement said on Saturday that it had achieved with its partners a landslide victory in the local elections in the West Bank. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken kicks off a Middle East trip on Sunday in Zionist territory, where he will take part in a rare Arab Zionist summit and hold talks with regional partners on delayed Iran nuclear deals, talks, and Russia's military operation in Ukraine. Blinken will meet with Zionist Prime Minister and Foreign Minister on the first leg of the Middle East and North Africa trip lasting until March 13th. The Algerian Foreign Minister, Mr. Amtala Mamra, in his presence within the 20th edition of the Doha Forum, emphasized a set of points that remain at the core of Algeria's concerns and approach toward the crisis in Libya, especially given what it is dictated by the requirements of the current stage, saying that the election must not turn into an end in itself. The goal remains more comprehensive and the electoral campaign as important as it is in solving the problem of legitimacy.
In the beginning, I would like only to say that being the international group has focused on the project of elections on 24th of December in a way that it seemed as if there is no way of thinking of any alternative or anything else. In such a way that the international group and the Libyans, in fact, before them, have not been able to organize these elections at the specified date. This has made everybody feel frustrated, a sort of frustration, to forgetting or pretending to forget that Libya did actually make progress on different levels, and that it was important for us because instead of being frustrated, we should think about the failures and to learn the lessons from that in order to be able to go to the next period or to the coming stage, because losing the opportunities and losing the efforts that were made and the achievements that were might have negative repercussions on the future of Libya.
The second recorder containing the flight data from the crash in China was recovered on Sunday, which could help to know more about the causes of the airplane's crash. The China Eastern Airline Boeing 800, which linked the Chinese cities of Kunming and Canton, disintegrated on Monday on a wooded hill in Wuzhou of Ganqi province. According to the Philippine Coast Guard, a recent episode of close-distance maneuvering by a Chinese Coast Guard vessel in the disputed South China Sea restricted the movement of Philippine ships sailing nearby. It was unclear whether the Philippines had filed a diplomatic complaint in response to the event. Before making the event public, the PCG claimed it had to wait for approval from the country's National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea. To a different matter, the Oscars ceremony sparked back this year after 2 years of COVID-19 restrictions with its red carpet and golden status, and will be hosted by 3 women for the first time. However, it seems that once again, politics are involved, with the CNP calling for Oscars to boycott if Ukraine's president isn't featured and stars showing support to Ukraine. Miriam Zian has more to tell.
The Russian military operation, Ukrainian conflict all over the headlines, refugee crisis. Oscar's big event will be held Sunday evening after 2 years of absence. But today, it will be impossible to separate politics from the party amid Russia's ongoing special military operation. Jamie Dornan, one of the stars of Best Picture nominee Belfast, told Sky News he feels it's important to feature Ukraine in some way.
Given the platform, there's so many eyes of the world watching, and that's the right place to be talking about it.
Sean Penn, the Hollywood actor, director, and producer, is calling Hollywood to boycott the 2022 Academy Awards if the show doesn't invite Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to speak.
If the Academy has elected not to do it, if presenters have elected not to pursue the leadership in Ukraine who are taking bullets and bombs for us, along with the Ukrainian children that they are trying to protect, then I think every single one of those people and every bit of that decision will have been the most obscene moment in all of Hollywood history.
Many artists advocated for bringing the Ukrainian matter in this ceremony, since there is so many eyes watching, according to them. However, it is unclear if Zelensky will appear during this year's ceremony this evening, according to Schumer's remarks. The Oscars offers an opportunity to bring politics on stage once again, as political sentiment seems to be impossible to separate from other fields.
Ending up with sport now, Christian Eriksen has made a sensational return to international football with a goal 2 minutes into his first game for Denmark since suffering a cardiac arrest last summer. The Brentford midfield scored with his first touch after coming on as a second-half substitute in the 4-42 defeat away to the Netherlands on Saturday. As he trotted on the pitch, he received a standing ovation from much of the Johan Cruyff Arena. 30 years old scored Denmark's second goal to put his side back in the contest at when he brilliantly swept in Andreas Oslian's low cross. Lovely finish.
I am happy to show that I'm still a footballer. I was really looking forward to it. Of course, it was fraught for the people in the outside world. But for me, there was only the focus to play football again. It is nice to be able to play again. And yes, I'm so happy to return here. I have had good years in Amsterdam. And as you can see, I still know where the goal is.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a reminder for our main top stories. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. With these words, President Joe Biden declared forcefully that Russian President Vladimir Putin should no longer remain in power. Four Russian rockets have struck Ukraine's Lviv in one of the fiercest attacks on the western city, providing safe haven for hundreds of thousands of people fleeing confrontation in the east of the country. Yemen's Houthi announced 3-day ceasefire after Saudi attack. Statement comes a day after a wave of drone and missile attacks hit targets across Saudi Arabia. Oscars producers plan thoughtful Ukraine tribute and don't rule out Zelensky's appearance, but the actor Sim Ben calls for Oscars to be boycotted if Ukraine's president isn't featured. That's all what we have so far. Further details in the comment bulletin. Thank you so much for being with us. Take care.